What's up, everyone? Philly Insider Hunter got Ian with me tonight. Drew couldn't make it, but thanks for hopping on, Ian. I know this is not the
Anytime.
best circumstances to be hopping on in, and yeah, I mean they went up 1-0, Ian, and like I certainly didn't think the game was over, but I was like, okay, like maybe they're going to turn it around tonight and figure out just scrape and claw their way to a win. But the whole day I didn't feel good. Last night I didn't feel good. And honestly, going into the series, I didn't feel good. You and me did not want to play the Mets long before they even got seeded to us. And everything fell into
Yeah.
place. The Mets, not only were they going to be in, then they got the seed to play against us. Then they beat the Brewers miraculously. Then they come in and take game one in miraculous fashion in Citizens Bank Park. Everything fell into place for them. They're a hot team right now. They have the 6 seed magic. And it freaking sucks because we hate the Mets. But unfortunately, this is now a reality, Ian. It is no more a worry. It's no more a fear. They beat us in the National League Division Series. So I just want to ask how you're feeling. I think I know how you're feeling, but general thoughts on tonight's game, anything you want to talk about?
I mean, off rip, this is the most painful experience I've had as a sports fan. This is more painful than losing 2022 World Series. This is more painful than losing the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. This is more like this is the most searing loss that I've had. And I know it might call it a Cardinals Philly sin, if you will. The Phillies are like my favorite team. And out of all the Philly teams, they're my favorite. And to lose to your biggest rival, no matter, and it's crazy because no matter how bad the Mets are, no matter how bad we are, there's always a fire there to beat them. No matter like it, and it blows. And this Mets team is so hateable, and it makes the loss that much more searing. Where it's like you have, that OMG thing. Don't even get me started on how annoying that is. You have the OMG, you have Pete Alonso blowing kisses in Citizens Bank Park, like the most annoying player in all of sports. Like, I just, it hurts. And this team, we talk so much about the love affair between this team and the city and how, like, it was such a give and take. That's dead. Like, they let us down. And it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. Like, I don't even know what else to say. I mean, tonight's game, we were texting a bunch, and it was like it felt rancid. Like coming into it, it was. I literally I texted you this morning. I was like, I woke up 3 times last night and got 6 hours of sleep because I legit, I was like, I felt nauseous about losing to the Mets. And lo and behold, it happened. And it sucks. There are a lot of players that, I know we're going to talk about in a minute. Alec Bohm is a huge one that, listen, I'll say this much. I think it would be best for both him and the city if he were gone because he is too soft to take the criticism that we're going to have for him, like moving forward, especially through the offseason. And I just think for him and his mental health and him as a player and his development, it'd be better for him to leave. I think it'd be better for this organization and the city that he leaves because he clearly just cannot do it. Like he cannot cut it. And again, we'll get to it. Topper, there are some critiques, to put it lightly. Um, there's a lot to talk about. And obviously, Jack Fritz, I was listening to High Hopes before this. I completely agree. We need some major changes this offseason. This core is done. This is not a fringe move offseason. This is not a bullpen arm here, a bench bat there. This is like, no, we need lineup guys. We need lineup guys this year. So that's where I'm at. Sorry, I know it was long winded. I know it was a bit of a rant, but how
No,
are you feeling?
that's the time. That's just the time for it, Ian. And yeah, I like you said, I didn't have a good feeling coming into today. Yeah, like you said, very hateable Mets team, and that's the thing. Like you said, during those years with now the rebuild years, I won't say I was particularly like super invested in this rivalry, and it died for probably like 10, 11 years or so, because both teams were bad for a good bit. But like when Kapler got here. Obviously, those years didn't go well, but middle of the season, we were semi-relevant. So, like the Reese slow trot, like there's Dribble Cabrera walk-off for them. Like there were some moments for sure. And that was really fun to watch, and it kind of reignited the rivalry. You and me were there in 2021 when it was, we thought at the time it was for the division. And of course, both teams choked and the Braves ended up winning that year.
Crazy.
Point being, that weekend that you and me went to, I was at 2 of the games. The one you and me went to was awesome. And all 3 of those games we swept them. Like, that kind of reignited the rivalry a little bit too. And there's a lot of notable moments in Phillies Mets history, but we are now never going to be able to hold over them that we beat them in a playoff series. That is now stamped and set in stone. And the Phillies have to live with that. The guys on this team have to live with that. The fans have to live with that this team couldn't get the job done against their biggest rival in a year where they were the 2 seed. They won the division. They were expected to be way better than the Mets. The Mets were supposed to still be rebuilding this year, retooling, some might say. And they caught fire because of a weird Grimace thing and a pop song this summer, and the vibes kept going. And unfortunately, man, Jose Alvarado gave them a lot of life when he gave up that walk-off in London, or whatever it was in London. Yeah, we have to talk about him too. But we're going to talk about everyone tonight. I'll assure you of that. This reminds me of the Braves the past 2 years against us. I mean, last year they had that dramatic Game 2 win with Michael Harris having that catch and then throwing the ball. I mean, throwing ball back to first and doubling up Bryce, and then we come back and dominate the next 2 games. You know, not dominate the 4th game, but win that 4th game. We had all the vibes on our side both of those years, and it takes you back to Game 2 on Sunday, which you were at, which was just electric. There was so much intensity of that. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of words you could use to describe it. Like there was so much positivity after that game, and you thought maybe they could carry that momentum into Citi Field. And honestly, like, look, Citi Field, credit to them, they were loud, but they certainly weren't like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Citi Field gets loud in the regular season. Citi Field gets loud in the regular season. I thought it was going to be much more hostile than it seemed to be. And I heard from people like Phillies fans who were up there that it wasn't super bad, to be honest. And it was loud, but it wasn't deafening. So I can't really say like that the environment was a big impact on the Phillies or anything like that. And look, the Mets got hot. Like they got the Cinderella team vibes, like all that went in their favor. But ultimately, I mean, the Phillies beat themselves. It wasn't that the Mets were the better team per se. Like the Mets obviously played better than us this series. It wasn't that the Mets were the better team. I'm not trying to discredit them. I'm trying to discredit the Phillies team that thinks they're better than they are. That's my point in saying this. Like credit to the Mets. They played a great series and somehow got out of it, even with that bullpen and the pitching they have. I mean, their rotation's solid. Their bullpen is not that good. So they somehow figured out a way to win this series, and credit to them. They made moves at the deadline to bolster their team a little bit. But that being said, man, I mean, my perspective on the team changes moving forward. The Phillies will always be my favorite team in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Baseball.
Agreed.
It will always be my favorite sport. You know, it's not like basketball where it's like, yes, I do care about the Sixers, but where we're at now with the Sixers, I've lost a lot of the same passion. I'm still excited for them, obviously, but the Phillies will always be number one for me, no matter how bad they are.
Agreed.
Because I watched through. I mean, many of us watched through years where the Phillies were irrelevant. So I can, as much as this hurts, I can still take this and be excited for next season when it comes around. But it's a stain, man. It's a stain on this core. It's a stain on this team moving forward. And unfortunately, it's something, again, like all of Phillies Nation is going to have to live with this moving forward. And it freaking sucks because, you know, we could get one over on the Mets and we could beat them the whole regular season next year and go 14-0, whatever.
Yeah.
How many? We could go 13-0 against them next year. And it's not going to matter because they beat us in a playoff series and they'll always have that over us. So,
yeah. And they can always pull the meet us in October. Like, like
that's the Braves. We own the Braves, but now the Mets own us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It sucks. So with that, let's talk about the game a little bit today. And there was a lot of bad that happened, but I do want to start by talking about Ranger Suarez. He certainly got himself into a number of jams, settled in after a little bit. I think they pulled him at the right time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pitch count was getting up there, but relative to what we expected, I thought maybe he was going to go once through the order. He was fine. I mean, 4 1/3, 5 hits, 4 walks. Again, he put a lot of runners on, but he also struck out 8 guys. He didn't have everything working tonight. He wasn't perfect. His curveball was awesome. I mean, he struck out.
Curveball is filth.
I want to say he struck out all 8 guys on his curveball. I mean, he
He
had that
did.
mark.
Well, no, because I think there was a ninth guy, or maybe it was either on the 8th guy or there was like a 9th guy who
Okay.
did go on. I think it was a slider or a fastball, and it was a
Okay.
I think it was a fastball in because he was
Got it.
tunneling him curve,
Perfect. Yeah.
and then he did fastball in, and then yeah. But it was only one batter.
Right. Yeah. He made a lot of good pitches tonight, and him and Quintana are very similar in that, like, they're not going to usually miss in the zone. If they're going to miss, they will just miss out of the zone, and they'll take walks, and they know they're going to put runners on base, but they also have confidence that once they get those guys on base, they can get to a guy who they can get out and then get out of that jam.
Yeah.
So Ranger did that. The first couple innings were petrifying, and obviously I'm saying this, now we lost the game and it doesn't matter anymore. But Ranger, I mean, look, again, he was not what he was in the first half of the season. He's certainly been better than he was tonight. But just on that note, I know Nola wasn't his sharpest self yesterday either. I'm not going to sit here and try to defend him and say he was great. But that being said, between Suarez and Nola, they certainly weren't their sharpest. They were fine. Not the reason we lost these games, in my opinion, at all. And
quality starts.
Yeah. And I know it won't go down as one. Obviously, Ranger didn't go 5 innings, and Nola ends up giving up the 4 because Kirkland gives up a 2-out single, which, I mean, sometimes you just get unlucky. But Nola came out of the game with 2 runs. Obviously, they probably should have pulled Nola a batter earlier too yesterday. But again, we're going to talk about all that. That being said, Nola and Suarez not great. Certainly not the reason we lost in my eyes. Sanchez and Wheeler were awesome this past weekend, and I say all that to say the rotation did not let them down in this series. The rotation was what they expected it to be. You need a good starting pitching staff to be good in the playoffs. That part was there for them. I mean, that's not up for debate, in my opinion. There's going to be people who are going to be upset at Nola. Like I know that I've talked to a number of people who are not happy about Nola, but there's always people that aren't ever going to be happy with Nola, unfortunately, and they're waiting for Nola to collapse. So I get it. I'm not saying Nola was great, but again, it would not have mattered if he pitched a perfect game with how the offense was. So, and obviously I'm exaggerating there, but my point being, they were not going to win this series with the way the bats in the bullpen were. You needed to win at least 2 of those 3 battles, and you won 1 in the rotation, in my opinion. The Mets rotation was also very solid. I would argue ours was, I don't know, Minaya was really good yesterday, but regardless, I think they were excellent in the rotation category for the most part. You could say very good if you want to. I'll give you very good. Or above average. They were fine in that department. The bats were completely below average outside of 3 innings in this series. And the bullpen, I don't know if they might have had 1 or 2 good innings at most in this series. Like, and that's
the 1, 2, 3 Estevez inning, and then
Estevez inning, and
then maybe this Hoffman inning tonight.
Right.
Like the one, I'm not talking 2. I'm talking the 2/3 inning.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was bad.
It was really bad. And you know what, Ian? I'm disappointed in the bats for sure because they're getting paid the big money. But did a part of me deep down think that was a possibility? Absolutely, because we saw that the past 2 postseasons. I'm really more disappointed. I'm not saying the bullpen is more to blame. I think the bats are absolutely the bulk of the blame. But I am more disappointed in the bullpen because I expected a lot better of them. Especially, look, Hoffman's our guy. There are certain situations he probably could have been taken out of sooner, and Topper probably could have done a better job in this series. I don't think he's the person to blame. I think he could have done a better job. I think he definitely gets another year, and they run it back. Not run it back with the same team, but they run it back with Topper. And then next year, if there are decisions that cost them, I think then he might go. But I'm certainly not. This has not really moved the needle a ton for me on being mad at Topper because, to be honest, there's certain decisions he could have made and didn't make. But with how the bullpen was, I mean, there's only
who could you trust? Like that's my question. Who could Topper trust? And the answer is really no one. Like no one showed themselves to be trustworthy.
Yeah, and it makes you think: do you bring Sanchez in that inning where Hoffman started collapsing in on himself, and they put Estevez in to face Lindor, and you get a guy who induces a lot of ground ball contact, so you avoid a possible grand slam and get a possible double play.
Yeah.
And you have Lindor hitting from the right side in that situation. I'm not saying it's a huge detriment from him to hit from the right side, but you get Sanchez from the left side, obviously. So I wouldn't have been opposed to that. but I don't know if it really would have mattered. And yeah, the bullpen was just so disappointing to me. Like Kerkering was really bad in this series. I also think he's going to get better. I'm not really like long term. I'm not pushing the panic button on Kerkering.
Yeah, I agree.
Hoffman cost himself a lot of money with the way he played in this series.
He
Unfortunately,
did.
he really did.
He did.
And um, I'm gonna be honest. Like as much as I've loved Hoffman during his tenure here, and I wouldn't mind him being back, I don't know if I necessarily want him back if he can't pitch in the playoffs. Like if he can't be a clutch playoff
Yeah,
player.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
unfortunate, but that's kind of where I'm at on him. Uh, Strom, unfortunately, was not really that good in this series either. He was proven untrustworthy. I didn't even think the couple pitches he made. I thought there were some pitches Strom made where it was like, dude, I mean, you just got to tip your hat. Like you executed the pitch. And there were some he probably
Yeah,
could have
yeah.
been better on for sure. So Strom, I think he's going to be fine next year. Like again, it's a shame because I know I'm rambling. Sorry, like I'm talking a while right now. But
Hey,
like
no, you apologize.
I know Strom and Hoffman. Those are guys who are up for all MLB nominations right now for relievers. I don't think they'll win them, but the fact that they're on that list and they were all stars, really, really freaking impressive. But really disappointing, man. I mean, Strom was a guy who came through last year in the postseason. You know, Hoffman had that issue versus Riley, unfortunately, and unfortunately, you know, Hoffman's playoff track record right now is not great. Sadly, I hate to say it, but it's not been encouraging. Strom, I think Strom can bounce back from this. Like I think he's going to
Yeah,
be okay. I think Strom has been in the league a while. He's really hit. Like I feel like he's hitting his prime with us right now. I think next year he's going to have a good
I
year
agree.
too. But he didn't pitch well this postseason. Then Estevez was obviously he gave up the big one tonight. The outing before he was our only reliever who had a 1-2-3 inning. I think this whole series. So
Yeah,
you got literally the highest of highs with him, and you also got the lowest of lows with him. Unfortunately, so I don't know if he'll be back. They could re-sign him. They traded a couple prospects for him, Klassen and Aldegari. I mean, both those guys were very expendable. So I'm not. If they don't re-sign him, I'm not going to be super upset. If they bring him back, cool. I mean, that's fine with me.
yeah.
I think he's probably a fourth or fifth guy at best in a good pen, though. So I don't
I
think
agree.
he's a big high leverage guy. But that's kind of where I stand on the pen. I mean, those are the main guys, and I'll let you talk about your thoughts on them before we talk about Alvarado, who was basically unpitchable in this series.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I agree with like everything you said. You know, I do think the bats were, like you said, they were definitely the most blamed. But I agree in the sense of you, like our bullpen, we thought they were going to lock down.
Oh
Like
my gosh.
we thought like, and granted, that's also kind of why we had so much faith, like even early in a series, because it's like, listen, we only need to put up 3 to 4 runs, even three. And like as long as our starters do their jobs, which we had faith in, and they did come through. As long as our starters did our job and the bullpen just kept like literally just kept doing what they were doing, we thought we could win low scoring games. And granted, you have to put up more than I think what our highest scoring game outside of the game on Tuesday. So what, 2 runs? It was 7-2. I could be
And they
wrong
came
about
late.
that.
Those runs came
Yeah, they
very late.
came late. They were garbage time. So it's like, well, I guess the short one was the Schwarber leadoff in the 7-2 game. But it's like, what, you know, like, you know, the bats do have to come through. And I'm not saying that, like, yeah, you know, we probably weren't expecting to win a game 1-0, but listen, the bullpen was so disappointing. It was. And we, like, I hate to say it, but it, like, the bats we saw coming because of how cold they got late in the
Mm-hmm.
season. So it was almost like, well, this was kind of expected. And again, I'm not excusing it. It's not an excuse at all. I mean, we're going to get into the bats a lot later on. But like the bullpen was the most, like to me, I'm with you. It was so disappointing given how much faith we had in them. Um, again, I'm with you. I wouldn't hate extending Estevez, like if it's like a 1 or 2 year deal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate it. I also wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, we kept Estevez. Like,
right?
I would probably be like,
Doesn't move the needle.
either way, I would just be like, okay, whatever. Strom, like, I'm with you. I think he'll be fine. I really, given what Strom did last postseason, given what Strom has done pretty much all year, I do think he gets an unnecessary amount of hate when he's so good.
Yeah.
And to me, this was definitely more of a Strom fluke than a Strom norm.
Mm.
So I have so much faith in Matt Strom. I'm not worried. Like you said, I'm with you. I think he is hitting his prime with us right now. So I'm not terribly worried about that. And again, we're gonna save Alvarado for separate conversation. Kirkring, again, he's so young. I mean, we have to remember a year and 3-4 months ago, this guy, like a year and
A year and a
change,
month ago,
this
he got
guy,
called up.
yeah, like that's crazy. A year and a month ago, this guy got called up to the MLB.
Right.
So we need to remember, like, and he's still got, like, Kirkring stuff is nasty, and he's gonna like. I do think he is a cool, calm, collected guy. I do think he is gonna develop. Like, he's gonna be fine. Who else? Am I missing anyone?
Those are the four main guys. I mean, those are the top four
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
season with. So,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. I don't really have anything else, but the bullpen was very disappointing.
Yeah. And I know we commented on this already, but no, he
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the fall guy. And I'm
No,
not
he
going to sit
doesn't.
here and say again. Already said like Thompson did not have a perfect series. This was certainly
He did not.
out of the
He did
playoffs
not.
we've seen him all the series we've seen him manage before. This is definitely his worst one. But also, I don't know what decision he could have made that would have changed the outcome of this. The way the bats were going
Yeah.
and the way the bullpen was going. I just don't think anything would have changed. And the fall guy can also still be Kevin Long, which we will get into in a little
Yeah.
bit. But
Absolutely.
Crazy to be saying that after like a couple years ago, it was like, oh, like guys in Phillies
Miracle
uniforms
worker.
are allowed to get hits. That's crazy. And now we're at a point where, oh, we're back to where we were with more money invested. So we're going to talk about that. But yeah, like again, we can blame Topper all we want, but that's not going to change the outcome next year. There's going to need to be a lot more. So let's talk about Alvarado before or you got something to say, go for it.
No, if we're gonna save Topper, I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, we'll talk about Topper in a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll talk about some outfielders at the end. Tommy Pham and
Yeah.
Tyler O'Neill are free agents this year. It would be awesome. That would be
awesome.
That would be the Hunter Super Bowl right there if we got one of those guys. But
Or both.
I'll say this, why not? Put both of them in the corners. But I'll say this: Teoscar, great player, but chases a lot. I think he's probably a little better than Castellanos. I don't think he gets you much further. So that's just my opinion on that. Also, not a great fielder. He's got a good arm, but Santander, interesting switch hitter. He's a good player. Also hits a lot of bombs and can work the count a little bit. But I do think there's some issues there. I don't know if he's a perfect fit. I certainly wouldn't be mad at Santander. I think you could probably get a better fit than him. So that being said, I just wanted to say that real quick before we talk about Alvarado now. We'll talk about some free agents too, but Alvarado, like again, he really didn't pitch much in the series, and obviously it was he didn't earn it. And you know what? It was a rough season for him. He had something going on family wise, so I understand that. We don't know what was going on. I understand that was not. Obviously not an ideal situation for him from the sound of it. So praying for him and hopefully everything is okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hasn't really been healthy over his time as a Philly. Was not the same this year. And again, could totally be related to what's going on off the field. So I don't want to jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
That being said, we can only look at what we saw performance-wise this year. And he was not the same pitcher, Ian. I mean, he was from game one. The first couple months of the season, he was great. And then his velo started to go down. And I don't know the way he is right now. I just don't know if he's going to be the same guy again. And sometimes that happens with relievers where they have like a 1 to 2 year stretch and that's it. And they might not be the same again. That's why it's so hard to find relief pitchers to stick around for some time. There's a number of them.
Josh, like you look at Hader, who's an anomaly. Yeah. The fact that he was dominant for as long as he's been, like,
and he just had a down year, and he was still better than a lot of relievers in the league too. So there's very few guys who stick around for a while, and that's why those guys are some of the best in the game. But unfortunately, man, Alvarado was just not good, and I'm going to look up when some of these contracts end because I know Hoffman and Estevez are free agents this upcoming year. I mean, if you want to bring back,
extended.
what'd you say?
Strom just got extended.
Strom got extended, so he's here for a little bit. Obviously, Kirkring's on his rookie deal, so he's here for a while.
He's gonna be here for a long time.
Yeah. He's still got I think 5 years left after this. So Alvarado has a club option in 2026. Probably would not exercise it if he was still on the team by then. You might have to look to flip that if you can before it gets too dirty with the way he's pitching right now. I don't know what that looks like. If
he even looks decent in the regular season, I think you're probably I think you're probably flipping him even if he looks like I think he would have to either the only way that Alvarado stays on this team is if looks great in spring training and then he's like the Alvarado of old early in the season. Like he's like 2022 Alvarado, where it's like that guy you would trust with your life. That's the only way I think we don't flip him.
And look, I mean, if he sticks around here the whole next year, like I'm not going to be upset and be like, oh, why didn't we trade Alvarado? Because it's not that easy to do that, obviously, and he is under contract, so we're going to see what happens with him. But the only guys I out of the top 5 that I would really say like obviously they're coming back because of the contracts and Kirkring because he's young, but like Strom and Kirkring are back next year. I have confidence that they'll be better. I think Kirkring's going to continue to get better. He's not a postseason guy yet. I think he will get there though. He's got to trust his fastball more. Maybe I think he was working on adding another pitch to change up possibly. So
he should.
He should. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Just to have another pitch in the arsenal. But those are the only 2 guys who I'm bringing back as of right now next year. And then Hoffman, we'll see what the price is. Again, I'm not really after what happened this postseason, I'm not super bullish on bringing him back. And then Estevez, it's like whatever. Like to me, it's one of them. You know, if you lose both of them, I'm not going to be upset either. And you go out and get a guy like Jimmy Garcia, I'd be fine with that. But you have to see. You have to play the reliever market. But point being, there's two of our guys at the least are. I don't think both of them are going to be back. And Estevez. At least one of them is going to walk, and possibly both. So there's definitely going to be some decisions to be made. As far as the rest of the pen, I mean, Jose Ruiz is fine in his role. Again, he probably shouldn't have been put into some of those spots where we're already down a couple runs, and then there's guys on base because it's pretty much you're at least going to give up 1 run there. So Jose Ruiz is the guy he's coming in to eat innings. I mean, he's not. I
think he's good at his role. I think he's good in his role.
Yeah, and if he's back, fine. If he's not, whatever. I mean, that's not a big deal to me. I think Tanner Banks will be there. They're going to try to develop him. He's 31, but I think they're going to try to work on getting him to being a good lefty specialist, kind of like what they were hoping Gregory Soto could be for them. They hoped Gregory Soto more. That's another thing, man. I mean, Gregory Soto did nothing for this team, unfortunately, and he didn't really figure it out in Baltimore either. So that really killed them. The trades have been really rough for them under Dombrowski. And then Sir Anthony, I mean, he got a little bit better when he went to Baltimore, but him not performing the same way he had been was really killing them. And then I still thought they had 4 or 5 guys who could get the job done, and none of them did. So, I don't really have any other things on the bullpen. I mean, those are really the main points I have. I mean, I think we talked about everyone. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to say on the pen, but
no.
Those are really the talking points I wanted to hit. And again, Kirkring and Strom, I'd love to have them back next year, and I still have faith that they can figure it out. Obviously, they did not pitch well this series, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I don't have anything else.
Yep. The bullpen, just to wrap up, unfortunately, again, the offense was the big reason, but the bullpen is right up there, and the bullpen was more disappointing in my opinion because of expectations. So, yeah. Dylan Walkman, I'm with you, man. I mean, not mad, just disappointed. I mean, that's a good way to put it. I am mad, but
I was about to say I feel angry.
But I get what he's saying. It's
I'm with you.
It's disappointing, and some people don't have the energy to work up to be mad, which I also get. So got a question here. Ada Miller went from Jersey Shore to Trip. I believe he ended in double.
I thought he's double. Yeah, I was about to say I'm pretty sure he's in double. Yeah.
Rod says here, I'm pretty sure he's double.
Crawford, I think, is up to Yeah, no, he's double. He's double
He
too.
got the double A too. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I don't. People have asked like, are they going to be ready by next year? Justin, I don't think definitely will not be. Aiden, I think he still needs another year at least.
I would
So
like to give Aiden another year.
yeah, me too.
And now, granted, even if he lights it up all of next year, because Hunter and I were texting about this the other night, um, even if he lights it up all of next year, I'd probably want to see him spring training 2026, kind of solidify it.
Yeah,
Um, and then pull him up. I wouldn't mind you got to remember, this kid's only 19, I think, maybe 20. He'll be
yeah, he's
20.
young.
Like, even if you wait 2 years, he's going to be 22. Like,
Yeah,
I love him. I cannot wait for him, but let's pump the brakes a little bit so that
yeah,
we
he'll
don't
be
kill
21
him,
in June
you
this
know.
year.
Yeah, he'll be 21. So he'll be 22 if it's like 2026.
Yeah, and like, look, he's not having an Andrew Painter meteoric rise to the big leagues, but it's not far off either. So like, he'll be up
No,
here at
he's
some point.
killing it.
Like, would it shock me if he was up in the big leagues at some point this upcoming year? No, it certainly would not.
Yeah.
But I also, and
Especially like if injuries happen and like,
yeah, hmm
you never know.
yep, exactly. So yeah, I mean, Painter though, he's pitching in the fall league on Saturday, so perfect timing. They get eliminated. We have something to watch on Saturday. But Painter looked really good in his past bullpen. Apparently, I think he was up to 99, which is super encouraging. And
That is really encouraging.
that guy has the makings of like a Paul Skeens, Spencer Strider type
Yeah.
of pitcher, to where like he could come into the big leagues just because of his fastball. I mean, obviously his other stuff's going to develop more too, but like when he
Dude
comes
just
back,
pumps
yeah,
gas.
when he comes back and when he's pitching up here with us, like that gives me, I will say, that's one thing I want to say is I was texting people because I had pretty much in my mind conceded that the series was over last night. And I know that's not a great way to go about it, but that's how I felt. And I
Yeah.
was already thinking off season a little bit. So excuse me if I'm a fake Phillies fan for that, but that's just how I felt. That being said, point being, I was talking to some people about the long term, and a lot of people are very doom and gloom now. Obviously, this is how you're going to feel when the Phillies blow a series. Is well, they're never going to do
Yeah.
anything.
It's natural.
My personal opinion, and I'll ask you for yours too, Ian, but I think they are actually still going to like. I don't think they're going to be a contender necessarily next year. I think they will be in the mix. Absolutely, they will be in the
Yeah.
playoffs. I think. And if they're not, whatever. Like you know what? At this point, they could probably use a year off, and I think as fans, we could use a year off too. So
Yeah.
I'm going to root for them to make the playoffs, but if they don't, maybe it's for
Absolutely.
the best. So that being said, I think they will still be in the playoffs, and that's the thing is, yes, you followed the same trend of 09, 10, and 11, where it was losing the World Series, losing the NLCS, losing the LDS. Yeah, that happened. That being said, I think they've done a good job to where they have enough in place to where this is not going to spiral out of control the way it did from 2012 to 2014. I mean, that was just,
Yeah, I
that
agree. I agree.
killed me as a Phillies fan watching that for those years. Like it was just 2013 and 2014 were awful. I mean, because you weren't the bottom feeder, but you were pretty darn close and you were not going to be a playoff team. 2012, I think they were 500. They missed the wild card. So that being said, they have a guy like Andrew Painter, and with a rotation next 3 years of, I mean, I think Wheeler's extension, I believe, kicks in this upcoming year. So
I think
you're
so.
going to have a rotation of Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez. You still have Suarez for next year. We'll see what happens with Suarez. I'm not
Yeah.
totally. They have to give him an extension right now. I wouldn't mind it, but I think the way he finished the season and the health concerns and the velo being down, there's a lot to figure out there. That being said, you now have Painter who's going to join the rotation at some point. Who I think, like, again, I know prospects are not a guarantee, but I think he's close to a guarantee of being a pretty darn good pitcher in the big leagues. So
Yeah.
you now have him who is hopefully going to develop into an ace someday too, which is really exciting. And you've developed a young guy in Christopher Sanchez who just pitched a really good game on Sunday. So
Yeah.
I think you have a couple young guys. You have a couple other guys in Wheeler and Nola who are going to be here for the next few years at least. And with that rotation, like you are going to win regular season games, even if your bats are not the best and even if your bullpen is not the best, you will be in the mix. And I trust that maybe they might need a couple years to retool in the next year or two to shift some pieces around the lineup, to shift some pieces around the bullpen. But I think they will get back to another like serious window at some point. So
Yeah.
I'm not fully doom and gloom on this team because of the rotation, because of a guy like Andrew Painter. So I wanted to bring that up since Painter was brought up.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Call me glass half full, but listen, depending on the moves that we make this offseason, because I really think this was a wake up call for Dave Dombrowski. I think, listen, if you mean to tell me that hypothetically and I don't know what the third base market looks like, so don't kill me. But hypothetically, listen, there were Juan Soto rumors before the postseason even started. If you got Juan Soto and I hate to
Oh,
say
yeah.
it, if you fired K Long and got someone else in here who has a good track record, like you do those two things, maybe you move Bohm, get insert league average, league slightly above average third baseman,
Yeah.
and you make some moves in the outfield. I could see our window still being open, fairly open, in
Yeah.
my opinion, because I mean, granted, maybe I have so much faith in Painter, but like I really think he's gonna just come up and deal. Like I
Yeah.
really do.
It's
Um,
exciting.
so I mean, I'm not counting us out. Now, granted, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, guys, we're getting Juan Soto, but like you get Juan Soto,
Things change for sure.
that is a lineup altering bat because now 1 through 4, and granted, I'm gonna get to Trey. He was disappointing, but
Yeah.
you mean to tell me even just 1 through 4, Schwarber, Trey, Harper, Soto,
It's pretty gross. Yeah.
like
There's protection behind
that's
Harper.
gross. Yeah, like, and that's the thing. And listen, Casty was the only one who hit this series. So, granted, will he do it next year? I don't know. But 1 through 4 and having someone behind Harper to where it's because look at what they did. They just walked Bryce so much. And granted, he had some bad at bats tonight, but they are afraid of Bryce. So if you put someone behind Bryce, you're making them pitch to Bryce. Like,
Yeah.
it's how it works.
Or
So
do you
I,
want
I
to pitch
do.
to the guy, or do you want to pitch to the guy that's gotten walked like almost as much as Barry Bonds?
Yeah, it's like, dude, you have to, so that's
Honestly,
where I'm
you
at.
might not try to keep interrupting you, but you
Yeah,
might get in some situations where they walk Bryce, and let's say they're second and third, and they walk Bryce. Teams might even concede a walk to Soto and give you a run just because they don't want
yeah,
to pitch at that point. That's very real.
yeah.
So
And
anyway,
and that's what I'm saying is like I'm not gonna say that our window is closed because we don't know what the offseason holds. And
yeah,
granted, if we ran it back, like let's say the only thing that happened was, sorry, my
no, you're
allergies
good.
are acting up. But
You're good.
if the only thing that happened was that Painter got called up, yeah, I would probably be like, and Grant, Painter's going to pitch next year. He's going to be in the rotation next year. But
Yeah,
if if you tell me, yeah, that's the only real move that we make, the rest is just fringe. Yeah, we're probably not going to be legit contenders. But
yeah,
I really do think that this was a Dave Dombrowski wake up call, and that something's going to happen.
yeah,
And I will
yeah.
be
We will
right
see.
back.
No, you're good. Take your time, Ian. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, again, I like Ian. I don't want to sit here and say that we're going to get Juan Soto. There is a possibility there. Juan Soto is obviously a generational talent. So if you have the chance to get him and you can put him in this lineup, you do that every single day of the week. I mean, that's an easy decision. And like we talked about, you have protection behind Bryce Harper in that scenario. I do wonder what you would do with Kevin Long in that situation because I think there's a high chance he gets fired and is one of the scapegoats after it's all said and done this offseason. I also know that Trey and Bryce, I mean, I'm not saying that was the sole reason they were here, but and not Bryce, because Bryce was here, I believe, before K Long got here. But point being, it was probably part of why Trey came here. There's a number of reasons why Trey came here. I think his wife is from here. He knows Bryce, obviously, but I think K Long was probably a factor in that. And do you need to have K Long here to get Juan Soto here. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that is going to be the sole deciding factor, obviously. I think Juan Soto is probably going to end up in New York when it's all said and done. I think he will probably be back with the Yankees. I think the Mets will be in the mix on him. I think the Phillies will be in the mix as well. But I think he when it's all said and done, I think Juan Soto will end up back in New York. But that being said, there are some rumors. There is a chance he could end up here. It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. And that 3-4, no matter who you have in the 3-4 spot, would be gross. So we'll see. Obviously, Juan Soto is something we'll have plenty of discussions in the offseason. But yeah, that would be interesting. But that being said, that's a good transition into the lineup. I think we hashed out the bullpen a good bit. I think that's fairly clear cut and dry. Some things we could probably debate, but obviously the bullpen was not good. There's not too much else to say outside of what we already discussed on them. But let's talk about, I have two things I want to talk about. One thing I want to mention, we talked about the rotation a good bit. Again, Painter coming back next year. That's a really good 5-man rotation. But I want to say this too. Spencer Turnbull, I feel really bad for the way the season panned out for him because he started out great. Injuries hit him once again. And, he could have been a nice pen piece to have in this postseason, depending on how things turned out for him as the year went on. I'm not saying that would have saved us, but just for him individually, feel bad for how the season worked out. And as far as the other person for the 5 spot goes, Taijuan Walker, he will probably get an opportunity in spring training where they're going to just last-ditch effort, see if they can figure something out with him. And then I think he's probably going after that. But, yeah, I mean, look, I just don't know. I don't know what they think is going to change with Taijuan. Like Dylan said, you got to get him. You got to get him out. You just can't here beyond spring training. I imagine he's going to be here through spring training. He wasn't on the playoff roster for obvious reasons. So, yeah, I don't really know what's going to end up how that situation is going to pan out. But obviously, we know what happened this past year with Taijuan Walker. Yeah. He cost us a number of games. And honestly, there wasn't many answers in that 5 spot. Mercado had one good start and then fell apart. Tyler Phillips had 3 good starts and then fell apart. Yeah, look, I mean, they just did not have an answer in that 5 spot. Colby Allard was okay. I mean, at best. That's really, that's all you can say on it was they did not have a 5 guy. And look, not many teams have a good 5th starter. That's obviously a reality in the league. It's hard to get guys who can pitch out of the 5th spot. It's a reason why you don't have those guys pitching in postseason baseball, obviously. But that being said, that was really disappointing. So I just wanted to bring up that on the rotation before we move forward. You just had a wasted spot there, and you're now putting Painter in that spot too. So,
yeah, Taijuan, honest to goodness, even if he stays through spring training, it's probably because they don't want to rush Painter, and they're going to call up Painter May, I would say June latest.
Yeah,
and the second Painter gets called up, Taijuan's getting DFA'd. Or they're trading him if any team is willing to, just have an innings eater. If a team wants an innings eater, maybe we get a pity trade or something. But he's gone next year at some point.
Yeah, 100%. So I just wanted to say that on the rotation before we move forward. And one thing I want to say on the lineup before we move forward, because he's not really a major talking point. I thought Weston Wilson had 3 fairly well hit baseballs tonight, and he probably if he gets some reps and gets an opportunity to really get his feet under him in this series, maybe in this game by this time he's ready to actually produce too. This was the first time he had seen the field in weeks. I mean, he hadn't played in a good bit. I believe he played September 28th so maybe not weeks, but September 28th I think was maybe one of the last times he played. That might have been our last game of the year. I don't know. Point being, he wasn't playing in this series up until today. And honestly, when it was all said and done, Ian, Austin Hayes was not the best option for the platoon in left field. Johan Rojas was not a good enough hitter. Brandon Marsh was really not getting the job done. Weston Wilson was kind of one of the few who, he was really the only one who, by the time it was all said and done, it was there might actually be something there. He did his job this year. I mean, he came in when guys were hurt. He did a really good job. Played a couple different positions too. It was really impressive. So, yeah, I mean, again, I just wanted to say that Weston Wilson was awesome this year. He was really good in spurts last year, and I just wanted to say that before we get into the lineup. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, you definitely have to give him his flowers. And honestly, like, I'll say this much. He's worth kicking the tires on in left field. Like,
yeah,
if you want to platoon Marsh and Rojas, because admittedly Rojas, got on base a lot in October. He found a way.
yeah,
Um, I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind a Rojas Marsh platoon or even and I feel bad saying it, but even a Marsh Wilson platoon. Like,
yeah,
Wilson has earned it. He has a great approach. He hits the ball really hard. Like, the dude just is a sound baseball player. And I would be remiss if we did not see what he has. Like, he's earned it. He really has.
yeah. Yeah, and like Richard said, the outfield was a major problem this year. I mean, just
Yeah.
horrendous. I mean, it was awful. Hayes was. I know Hayes. Like again, I have some sympathy for him because the kidney thing was just completely unexpected, and like the poor guy. I
Yeah.
mean, he was going through it with the kidney infection. So I feel
Yeah.
bad. I feel bad for him. And like again, he wasn't really healthy this year. He couldn't catch a break. But again, I mean, we're going off of what we saw in the playoffs in that series. And yesterday he comes in, I believe he had a 1-pitch ground out, and then I think he struck out on 3 pitches. He struck out twice. I mean, very uncompetitive at bats. So the nice thing is, me and Drew talked about it yesterday. They have no strings attached. I mean, they didn't give up anything for him. They gave up Sir Anthony, who wasn't going to pitch for them anyway. And Sir Anthony, he's fine, but you didn't really like lose a ton in that trade. So I'm not worried if they lose that trade, whatever. They didn't give up like a big prospect or anything.
Yeah.
But look, Austin Hayes was it just didn't work out. And honestly, I hate to say it, but a lot of the trades for Dave Dombrowski have not worked out here. Free agency has been very good. Trades have been really bad. Austin Hayes trade did not work out. The only bat they added last year at the deadline was Rodolfo Castro, and Michael Lorenzen was good for 2 starts. The year before, Syndergaard was actually fine. I think they got the last bit of juice he had for his career out of him.
Yeah.
And he was fine, but again, like that was more so to eat innings. Marsh is an interesting one. I think that was a fine trade. I don't think they necessarily like dominated it. Ohapi still got some things to figure out too. Like, he's not a perfect player right now. He probably wasn't going to play for us, but obviously with how JT's played, that's another thing we got to talk about. Interesting conversation there. So the Marsh trade, it's like I still at the time would have done that. And then you gave up Moniak for Syndergaard. I mean, Moniak's a strikeout machine, so I'm not upset about that. They got David Robertson at that deadline, which that didn't pan out at all. I mean, yikes. That he closed out game 1 of the World Series, closed it out. I mean, Aledmys Diaz tried to get hit by a pitch and didn't want to swing the bat at bat. So he got bailed out. And then the one before was Ian Kennedy. That didn't work out. They got Kyle Gibson in that deal too, which like Kyle Gibson was fine. I mean, I'm not really upset about that. I think he was fine. They get Freddie Galvis back, which look, I love Freddie Galvis. Very uncompetitive move. Like that's the bat you're picking up at that deadline. And they might have gotten someone else at the deadline too. Like, that's the trades we've seen. And then I want to say he got Alvarado his first year. So I would say that worked out fairly well. He was a key piece to our end for the last 2 years, not this year, but then he off-season trades, Gregory Soto trade. That was a disaster. And Vierling's still in the playoffs right now. They won today. The Tigers did.
Yeah, and Vierling's been hitting too.
He's actually a pretty solid player. And, Maton didn't really pan out. Cody Clemens was the better piece in that trade for us, honestly.
Just wild. Crazy wild the thing.
Yeah, really crazy.
Junior Marte was like.
Yeah, I mean, that was whatever. Like, there was a lot of small moves like that where it's like, okay, cool, I guess. So, yeah, the trades haven't really worked out well, and I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting, but just wanted to sorry, I know I was rambling, but I just wanted to say that before we kind of talk about the lineup here and talk about Weston. But let's get into the lineup a little bit. And I kind of just want to I want to jump into kind of the main culprits here too. And I still am mad at Castellanos, but also he was actually okay in this series, I would say. Obviously Sunday he was great, but today he had that.
Even tonight he got some hit. He got a hit.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I still have a lot of issues with him, but I don't want to start with him because I think there are other guys I want to start with. Trey got on base a couple times in games 2 and 3, but we're paying him to do a lot more than get on base right now. he was insanely disappointing. He's been insanely disappointing his first 2 years as a Philly, and the 11 upcoming years sound very long. Defensively, he's not. I mean, he's not a good shortstop. That's just not up for debate. He's not a good defensive shortstop. The speed hasn't been like he's been good on the base paths. I would say he's above average, but I thought he'd be doing a little bit more on the base paths.
Yeah.
His bat, like the only stretch out of his bat was the standing O to like probably midway point of this year, which is a pretty decently long stretch. And I thought he was good during the playoffs last year, but he just chases so many pitches. He waves at so many pitches that are just uncompetitive swings. And it looks rough right now. So I don't know. Trey still has time to figure it out and turn it around, but not very pleased with what we've gotten out of him so far.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I know I feel like I just say, well, Jack Fritz said, but I love Jack. But no, Jack made a good point. He was like, you pay this guy to just be a slap hitter and get on base. And even if you're getting singles, it's like the equivalent of getting a double because he's a menace on the base paths. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, where it's like you're paying him to get singles, double, like just get on the base. And he hasn't done that in like this October, the back half of the season. He's been terrible. And I know I'm going to sound like, every caller into WIP when I say this, but it's like, it feels like he's trying to hit the long ball. And it feels like he's like, that's not who you are as a player. You are a slap hitter. You are a contact hitter. A guy who's going to pull the ball, maybe a ground ball up the gap, or maybe like a single, a double in between two fielders that would normally be a single because you're that fast. Like, that's what we want out of you. Not like a guy who's going to try and hit for power. That's not who you are, dude. And it's really disappointing. And, you look at this contract and it's like, wow, we really have 11 more years of this. And this guy who's supposedly so fast, like, speed is the one thing that wears away over time in baseball. Like it wears. We paid him for like really the first 3 to 5 years of Trey Turner. That's what we paid him for. And we're 2 years deep, and I'm not really satisfied with what I had. Granted, I know the injury, I think it was a hamstring earlier this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say it was a hamstring.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It was some leg injury. It seemed like he never came back like the same after that. Why, I don't know. But yeah, I'm really disappointed. It's looking scary. I'm not like, I would say my hand is like hovering over the panic button. If we get a bad year out of Trey next year, I'm going to be slamming that thing. But I would, in terms of like how scared am I, my hand is hovering over it, a bit, like ready to press at any moment. That's about where I'm at with Trey. Yeah. I completely agree with this comment too. It is starting to feel bad. And it's like very underwhelming for what we paid.
Yeah. It's been very disappointing. And yeah, he is a streaky player. Correct me, please, if you could tell me how to pronounce your name too. But he is a streaky player for sure, but there are also certain tendencies he has that will ultimately fail you in postseason baseball. And you just can't afford that. You can't afford to have a guy who's in front. You can't afford to have guys in front and in back of Bryce in the order that are going to wave and chase pitches. It's not going to work. And I think Bryce starts to feel that too when he starts chasing out of the zone because he feels like he's their only real shot to get those runs in certain spots. So, that being said, yeah, Trey, there's no stay or go with him. He's here for the next 11 years.
Yeah. And I think there's a no trade clause. I don't know if I think I'm right on that. Like, he's stuck here.
He's not.
And who's going to want to take on that contract anyway? Like,
yeah, Not if he's not going to play well. So maybe in a couple years, if he plays well enough, and obviously the AAV will be with prices rising, it'll be a little bit lower. Um,
Yeah.
but I still like regardless, they're not going to trade him anyway. Like they're going to want to
No.
ride this out with him. So
As they
there's
should.
no like
Yeah.
he has to figure it out. That it's just there's no other option. It's just going to come down to what improvements and adjustments can he make at the plate? Can he get out of his own way and figure out how to be a more disciplined hitter? Because he certainly, I'm not going to say he had a bad year, but it certainly didn't end up near where we thought it would. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I have on Trey. And yeah, Jake, I feel good about the long term. I think they will have pieces in place to still compete for a while. But like you said,
Yeah.
Harper's time is going to run out at some point. Like I'm not going to push that button just yet because obviously we said that with Embiid like 1,000 times, and then he comes back every year and does what he does. And Harper's not old yet. Harper's still in his prime years right now. Like Harper himself is going to be fine, but obviously there is a timetable for when he would need to get a ring for it to be more feasible. So, and yeah, we're going to talk about Kevin Long in a minute too when we keep going through this lineup, but. Yeah, that being said, I think JT, someone asked a question about JT, and at 33, can JT still be the full-time catcher going forward, or will he DH? He's not going to be the first baseman. Bryce is playing first base.
Yeah, Bryce has that locked.
As long as Schwarber is here, there's not a DH spot. So I don't know what happens with JT. Maybe getting off his feet and playing a different position. Maybe playing, maybe they shift some things around and maybe he does play one of those spots. But I don't really see it happening. That being said, let's say it does in a hypothetical situation, getting off his feet and not having the catcher, like the weight of being the catcher on him anymore could certainly help him at the plate. I'm not denying that. But at the same time, is it going to be enough to where you'd want to have him at first or DH? Like, is he going to produce at that high of a clip to where, like, is he going to get that much better as a hitter as he goes into this back part of his career? I'm not so certain of that. That being said, there's not a lot of talent at the catcher position. Like, it's hard to find guys who even do what JT does. But he did not. He's definitely like, I don't think it. I think it's undeniable he's declining right now. No doubt in my mind, like he is declining. I think he's still a fairly good defensive catcher for his age, but that's not going to last forever. So I don't know, man. JT to me, like, look, I love JT as a guy. I think he's an awesome dude. Just love what he brings to the clubhouse. I think he's a great dude.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, again, he's here next year in my mind. I think he finishes out his current deal for sure. It's a hard position to play. It really is. And it's a hard position to find talent out at for a reason.
Yeah.
But after his contract is up, I don't know. Maybe he gets a 1 or 2 year deal. Probably not much more than that. Because look, Eduardo Taillon, he looks like a great catcher right now. He's still in low A. I mean, he finished the year in low A. He's a long ways away. Kid's like 18, 19 years old. Like, he's not an immediate replacement. He's not just, there's no guarantee that he's here and then comes up and replaces JT at some point. So we will see what happens with the catcher position. I'm curious to see what they do there beyond JT, but in my mind, he's here next year, but just really disappointing and has not added the depth to the bottom of the order that we need him to right now.
Yeah. And, listen, this is hard for me to say. I mean, JT is literally, Hunter can attest, JT, I love him so much. Like, I love him in the clubhouse. I love him as a catcher. I love him when JT is on. He's just sensational. I really do love him. But that being said, he is clearly on the decline. He was already not having a great year, and then he had the knee injury, and it seemed like he just was like on the slightest of upticks and then just kind of plateaued. And yeah, I think it's a frustrating spot to be in because, JT is clearly not bolstering the bottom of the order like we hoped he would. But at the same time, it's like you have to consider what's out there. And unfortunately, there's not much better out there. So it's like, why not just ride it out with your guy? And also, too, maybe you hope he gets better without injury. Maybe you Yeah, with how good Marchand has looked, maybe you're more willing because I think Stubbs was on a club option this year. Um,
And I think he will
so
be
maybe you
next year too, contract wise.
next
But
year.
I don't
Gotcha.
think he's guaranteed a spot though.
Yeah, but point being is, oh, sorry, I thought I had
You're
a
good.
sneeze, but
You're
yeah.
good.
So all that to say is maybe Marchand is going to help JT get off of his feet more, which will also help JT be able to produce more at the plate. Maybe because Marchand's clearly shown that he's not a bad catcher at the MLB
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
So maybe you say, you know what, like we're going to give JT more frequent off days, and we'll see what happens. But I hope he can turn around. I'm such a huge fan of his. I love him. I I really no one would be happier with a JT turnaround than me, but I can't deny he's been bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, like we talk about Ohapi too. I was just talking about him, Jeremy. Look, Ohapi definitely like feels like the one that got away, but also this year he struck out like 30% of the time and had a 712 OPS. So, look, Ohapi is not a finished product by any means. And JT, I think, was definitely the better player this past year. So I don't know if having Ohapi in the series would have really fixed that necessarily. Maybe he is a better matchup for certain pitchers. I don't know. I don't know Ohapi that well. But that being said, yeah, like Ohapi would be great, but at the same time, I don't think he's a better option right now. Maybe he becomes one down the road, but I don't think that's bring Ohapi. Like if they bring Ohapi up, let's say he was still a prospect right now in our organization, we never traded him away, and you bring him up, and then like over the years he gets integrated. I don't know if that's necessarily like he's just going to come in and play fairly well right away. But that being said, yeah, it now that JT is not playing as well, it's definitely rough. And like you said, Marchand is an incredible defensive catcher. He's got a heck of an arm. I love watching him gun down guys at second base. So like he's a fun player to watch. And hitting wise, again, I don't know how sustainable what he does at the plate is, but I can't deny, like whenever he comes up, he gets hits. Like it's the weirdest thing. So maybe he just is like a guy who can catch in the big leagues as a backup catcher. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens with the backup catcher spot because those clubhouse vibes are going now. These guys lost in the first round. There was no dancing on my own this year outside of clinching the division. And that song's got to go too, by the way. I think at this point that's done with. But point being, I think Marchand should probably get that spot next year. And I think you give him a full season. I think, look, this year the argument was he needs to get reps at AAA. So he spent the rest of the year at AAA. I actually don't know how he did the rest of the year at AAA. But that being said, we saw what we saw from Marchand this year. I think it's time to put him in the backup catcher spot for sure. So I think we're going to agreement there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Richard said. Richard, shout out you, Richard. I think we're agreeing with a lot of your takes right now. So we need a better backup at catcher. Hopefully that's Marchand. Yeah, he's going to get older, and you're going to need guys to give his legs some rest, like Ian said. So
yeah.
And yeah, Ohapi was dynamite for a while. Yeah, this was his first major league season. No, like you said, but the strikeout rate is still the strikeout rate, and there's still some plate discipline and approach issues there. So he certainly could become a better catcher, but JT, in my opinion, is by far the better defensive catcher. I think he's still a better hitter than Ohapi, but I'm not saying, that's going to trend in JT's favor moving forward. I just think, I don't know if Ohapi would have changed the series. And again, it's tough because at the time, like the timelines didn't match up to where Ohapi was going to play here. So, we talked about Juan Soto a little bit. We'll see. I wouldn't get your hopes up, but it's a possibility. So
yeah, he's more than likely going to stay in New York.
Yeah, and Jake says we need more singles in the lineup. I mean, to an extent, I agree. And yeah, Segura had a lot of good at bats. Reese obviously was a guy. Like you said, that's more so the last thing you said, Jake, is the key to me. Reese saw a lot of pitches, and Reese would walk a lot. You need guys with better approaches in the lineup right now, which is why I've wanted Tommy Pham and Tyler O'Neill the past 2 or 3 years. And I understand Tommy Pham, there's the locker room stuff, so they probably won't end up with him. And they apparently did not want him for reasons Matt Gelb could not say at the deadline. So I don't know what that means, but they're probably never going to pursue him, which is unfortunate because he just got a big postseason hit the other night with the Royals, I believe. And again, that guy just hits in the postseason. But you need guys with better approaches. You can't have a guy behind Harper in the order and in front of Harper in the order that is going to chase. And that's what you had this year.
Yeah.
Those two guys who I mentioned, Tyler O'Neill and Tommy Pham, the reason why I've always liked them so much is because they have good approaches at the plate. They don't go and chase out of the zone. And it's obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. I'm not denying that. But I've always been a big believer in both of them. Tyler O'Neill, it's just, can he stay healthy? Tommy Pham, it's more so he's getting older and, again, the locker room stuff. But those are like the profiles of players I'm looking for to get someone behind Bryce. And the reason I look at them is because outfield is where you have room right now. We'll see about third base. That's something else we got to discuss too. But yeah, I agree with you to an extent, Jake. I think we mostly agree on what you said. So, and look, Juan Soto, I understand what you're saying.
He's a generational talent, though.
He is a 1 of every 10-year player, maybe more than that. There aren't many guys that come along like him. So, yeah, Soto is incredible. I mean, I don't care. You have to spend to win. So I know
the fact the fact that he is number 2 in the MVP race and number 1 is literally his teammate. Choose how good he is. Yeah. Like, I'm just saying.
Yeah. And yeah, we talked about this, Jeremy. You can go rewind if you want to listen to our bullpen rant, but very disappointing. We expected a lot out of the bullpen, and it was not there. So, yeah, situational baseball. A lot of stuff to work on there for sure, Dylan. I agree with you.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Like Crawford, we talked about this earlier, but he's not going to be ready next year. He needs more time. Yeah. I still think there's a lot of stuff with Crawford at the plate that he needs to work out. I don't think he's going to be quite ready. But yeah,
and he's very Rojas, like he's diet Rojas right now, and we already have Rojas. Like I would not rush Crawford by any stretch.
And as much as I am mad at Kevin Long, I wouldn't say Kevin Long is the reason for Stott's decline this year. Like at the end of the day, Stott has to go up there and have it was interesting this year because I think Stott was second guessing himself a lot, and he was much more patient at the plate. But in turn, that resulted in much less success as far as hitting goes because he fell behind in the count a lot. So he worked a lot more walks, but he also he was on base of essentially the same amount, same percentage, I think 32. But he was also he also was just behind in the count a lot and fighting a losing battle. So maybe he goes back to a little bit more of what gave him success in the year prior. But yeah, K Long, let's talk about him because we've mentioned him enough before we get to the rest of this lineup. Was a big fan of K Long when he got here. I think he did some good things for this team, but there does have to be a scapegoat, and this lineup was the biggest reason for this collapse. They outside of game 2, they put up a combined 4 runs in the other 3 games, and 2 of those runs in the second or the third game came in garbage time. Did not matter. So there's got to be some changes made there. I think that's probably the easiest change you can make. Some people were saying in the comments, lure Juan Soto in with Kevin Long and then fire him. So I don't know if that's going to fly. That's certainly an interesting situation if they do decide to pursue Soto, how they handle things with Kevin Long. I don't think that's a make or break, but you never know with some of these guys. I mean, that could be a big factor. So I don't know. It'll be curious to see what they do with K Long, but I ideally I would not like him back.
Yeah, I'm with you. The chasing was an issue last year. It continued to persist this year. We got the guy from the Giants, I forget his name, who was supposed to help with that, and it didn't work. I fully think if there is someone who has to go, it should be K Long. Now, granted, if you're telling me, oh well, no K Long, no Soto, and again, all likelihood.
Yeah,
he's probably going to stay in New York. But we're gonna make our best efforts. And if making our best effort is Kevin Long still being with the Phillies, then yeah, I would like to make that best effort and keep him there at least until Soto's like, yeah, I'm staying in New York. Then fire his butt out of here. I don't care. But I would like to see him go. I think this lineup, 2022, he was great. But clearly we've had enough of a sample size to where our bats are just not getting it done. And also, too, which was a great point, for whatever reason, we cannot hit when we are down. When we are down, we just give up. Now, granted, I don't know if you can blame that on Kevin Long. I don't know who you blame it on, but it's a common theme where it's we're down in the game. Oh well, we just can't hit. We can't come back. That's not what we do. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
totally
think
agree.
yeah, I think you need to shake up the plate approach, and unfortunately, with the chase issues, you've got to switch up the hitting coach. Like it's
Yeah,
that simple. Same problem for 2 years, and everyone in the clubhouse acknowledges it's a problem, and yet we're still
more
getting the
pain.
same result. So
Yeah.
I think he's got to go.
And again, part of it's like I'm not trying to fully blame the whole series on Kevin Long because these guys say
No,
one thing
no, not at
and
all.
they say one thing about the approach they're going to have, and then they don't carry it out in the game. It's never the pass the
Yeah,
baton approach. Like they don't do that in the games. It's as simple as that. So Kevin Long can only do so much, but at the same time, again, like the result the last couple of years has been the Phillies bats go cold and they lose in the playoffs as a result of that. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, he's probably got to go. It would be hilarious if like Juan Soto signs with the Yankees and then like the next day he gets fired.
Yeah,
That
that
would
would be
be
really funny.
pretty funny, honestly. Um, yeah, no hate towards Kevin Long. I mean, he seems like a great guy, and he did do some
Great
good things for
guy,
the organization.
but
But yeah, now there's some people saying that Cotham needs to go. Yeah, please step aside. That guy's
no,
not going
no.
anywhere.
Yeah, no, and I don't want him going anywhere. That's
No,
not the bullpen is not Cotham's fault. Like
no,
he can only do so much.
yeah, and
Um,
I
so
think he did.
yeah,
I think he did a really good job with a lot of pitchers over the past couple of years too. I don't want to.
absolutely.
I don't want to remove that. He's a big part of the pitching development, so I don't think he goes anywhere.
Especially with Painter
Yeah,
coming up, I really want him to be coached by Caleb Goff.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, look what Chris Sanchez did under that guy. Really impressive. A lot of guys took
I,
massive
I,
leaps.
I'll give Caleb Cotham a blank check to stay here forever. Like
Yeah.
I'm being so real. I don't want him going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, if you got to go, Ian, no worries. Like I know it's getting late,
No, I'm
but
good. I'm good.
yeah, I still have a lot that I want to get to. I mean, I won't keep you too long, but no
Yeah.
pun intended with Kevin Long. But it's been said a ton, but it feels like these guys want to make up for slumps with one swing. Mentality has to change to the
Yeah.
plate. Yeah, and that's part of it. Like going back to what Jake said, like, I don't think they need to necessarily add a ton of singles hitters. I think they need guys with better approaches. But also to Jake's point, the guys on the team need to have need to have that in mind more often because what they're like the approach they're taking, the mentality they have, like Richard said, I mean, I think a big part of it is again, they want to make up for it with one swing. I think you see that from Trey a ton. And I don't know, it's just you can't always it's again, hate to sound like a
It's about
WIP card here,
trusting.
but
Yeah.
you can't go for the long ball every single time. And I don't think
Yeah.
they do that every single at bat, but it feels like it a lot.
They do. And you have to trust the guy behind you.
Mhm.
Like Hunter, you always preach two strike hitting. Like it's a real thing, and that's what you see the Mets do. They had I
Yeah.
think what was it? They had 8 two-strike hits or 9 two-strike hits this series. Like it
Yeah.
was an absurd amount where it's just like all they did was choke up on the bat and rip it up the gap. That's
Yeah.
all that like you need, and also you need to trust that the guy behind you is going to
Yeah.
advance you or score you. Like you need to have a better approach. It's
Yeah.
that simple.
Yeah. And I'll get back to this comment gesture, but like, well, yeah, that's always going to be the
Yeah,
question. Like, if you're going to fire someone, like, yeah, you got to find a new replacement.
yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on who would be a great hitting coach in the league. It's not quite the NFL where you can be like, this guy's a good quarterbacks coach. Maybe he could be a good OC. Like, it's not necessarily like that cut and dry. There's guys who come out of nowhere. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, yeah, they got to find a replacement, but sometimes you also just need to make a change to make a change as well. And
yeah. I agree.
there's gonna be plenty of guys with this lineup. There's plenty of guys out there that'll want to work with this team too, depending on who
Yeah,
they bring in as well. Like, I don't think they're gonna have a lack of applicants for the spot. I'll say that much. But
yeah. I'm
um,
gonna be honest. If you take people from the Rays or the Astros, I don't ever
yeah,
think that's a bad idea.
yeah,
Like I'm gonna be honest.
go for it.
That was all I was gonna say. All I was saying is I'm gonna be honest. Those two, the Rays and the Astros, developed so well.
Yeah,
Like in terms of hitting, if you take a guy from there, I'm probably not going to be upset about it. Like,
Yeah. There's plenty of organizations you can poach from too. And look, I mean, I think Dombrowski, I'm definitely not like super. I'm not super on his side right now, I guess you could say.
yeah,
I do think him and Sam Fold have done a good job of putting the right people in the building, and that goes back. It's not just them. There's plenty of people who have done a good job of putting the right people in the building, like guys like Preston Mattingly and Brian Barber,
yeah.
obviously in the organization for a reason. So
Incredible.
um,
Incredible.
development is definitely getting better there, and I'm sure there's guys they know who they could bring in to be a good hitting coach too. So I don't think they're going to have a tough time replacing K Long if they need to do that, but I'm not saying it's a guarantee he's gonna be gone. Our veteran hitters could take a hint from Starling Marte and fight near bats. Yeah, Starling Marte was a great example of that this series, unfortunately. But I still think Sanchez will win a Cy one day. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I respect that. And yeah, to your point, like if he does, Caleb Cotham is a huge part of his improvement. And I certainly, I'm not going to put past a Cy like him, like a Cy Young past him. I think he's ascending at a pretty insane rate right now, and there's a lot to be excited about with him moving forward. But anyway, back to the lineup. I do want to talk about Alec Bohm because I think he's probably the most likely bat that you could see not in this lineup next year. Man, it's really crazy to be sitting here. I know this time last year when I was doing the elimination podcast, it's becoming an annual thing at this point, but I guess that's
sad.
A lot of people are saying, what do you do with Bohm? And at the time I was like, well, like, look, I know Bohm isn't necessarily like the best player right now, but also at the same time, I didn't see him going anywhere at this time last year.
Yeah.
Now I could definitely see something happening. I don't think it's a guarantee. Will I be surprised if he's our opening day starter at third? No, not at all. And he is a fan favorite, obviously. He has done. I mean, look, he's
for a certain demographic. He's a fan favorite.
Yes. The ladies are big fans of Alec Bohm, obviously. But he's obviously made a lot of strides here. He's become a better defensive third baseman. Not saying great, but better. He definitely has had some really good stretches at the plate too. But at the same time, the way he finished this year was really discouraging. And I mean, he was really poor in the playoffs this year. There's no way around it. I mean, you could tell today, the couple balls that got to hit to him, he was just in his own head. I think it became a mental thing for him, which that's really sad to see. Like, he's obviously a guy who's very hard on himself too. There was a lot of very childish tantrums throughout this year and that's been kind of a theme throughout his time as a Philly, which sometimes he bounces back from them, but it's like, I love that he wears his heart on his sleeve. And I know like he's beaten himself up enough. So like, I know he cares. I do know Alec Bohm cares. To me, it's never a heart thing with him.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
I do think those tantrums can affect his play, but at the same time, I don't think he's done enough. And I do think he was unfortunately a big issue in the series. Now, the Sosa thing, at the time I was like, well, you need a spark and you need something to send a message to these guys in the lineup. That did not necessarily work out too well. Obviously, Bohm didn't play that well that game, but I certainly think that may have affected Bohm the rest of that series. That on Rob's part probably was a panic move, to be quite honest, and maybe not the best way to go about that situation. But at the same time, I don't know if you just keep Bohm in the whole series, I don't think the result is all that different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I feel terrible saying it. I'm pounding the table for Bohm to leave. Yeah. I think it would be, yes, exactly. For his and the team's sake. That's exactly what I was about to say, Richard. I think he needs a change of scenery. I think we need to move on from him. Again, like Hunter was saying, the tantrums, they definitely get to him. And knowing this city, we hold a grudge over those kinds of things. And I think the relationship between the city and Bohm himself is only going to sour even more, especially after this. And especially, we're going to have a lot of time to think about Alec Bohm and his attitude and his performance. We are going to have till opening day, like April, last week of March, first week of April, from now till then, almost 6 months, about 5 months, this is going to age like milk to us. Like, we are going to get more mad. And listen, I'm not trying to call him soft. I'm not trying to say that. But I think Alec Bohm will take it personally. And he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's an emotional player. And I do like that he is open and honest about who he is. But we've got to be real. It will be better for him as a baseball player and as a human being if he is not in Philly next year. Yeah, he sucked. I, I don't know what else to say. I mean, he was a black hole pretty much since the All-Star break. He was a black hole in the lineup, and to have that as your like, I don't even know where you put him in a lineup, and it's just with all that, it's like, I I don't see him having a successful career in Philadelphia anymore, and he's just got to go. He's in his own head too much. And again, I think he'll be better for it. Like, I really do. I think it'll be better for him. I think it's better for the clubhouse. I think it's better for the city if Bohm makes his exit from the team. I hope we flip him. I hope we trade him. I won't be shocked if he's still here. I would not be surprised. I think he only has next year left on his deal.
I think he has 2 years left, actually. Let me check on that real quick. I want to say
because if he only,
I want to say it's his upcoming year and the year after, unfortunately.
Okay, but point being is, I think he will be gone soon. Especially, I would not be shocked if he's here next year, and maybe he's here the year after if he's okay. I don't know. I think at this point you're just playing like. I think you're really just evaluating, is Bohm a good bridge to Aiden Miller? Like, I feel like that's what you're doing. Is he going to be the bridge guy to Aiden Miller? And if not, then can we bring in a bridge guy who's going to be the guy who will, bridge the gap between Bohm and Aiden Miller? That's really what you're looking at this point. We know, I think it's confident to say, we know Bohm isn't the future of the franchise. Aiden Miller is not a guarantee, but he's flying at a meteoric rise through the minors. So you have to evaluate it. I don't think Aiden would come up next year. I think it's very realistic the year after, but again, we'll see. All that to say is, Bohm, for the better of this team, for the better of the city, for the better of himself, he's got to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens with him this offseason because, again, I won't be surprised if he is here on opening day, but I do think that's a big thing they have to consider is adding someone in that spot. And it's tough. The options at third base and free agency are limited. Alex Bregman's out there, but, again, he's 31 and he's probably going to get paid a decent bit, so I'm not really super in on that idea.
You just need like a temporary guy, like a 2 to 3 year deal.
The D-backs have a club option on Eugenio Suarez, who had a really good year. But I'd imagine they exercise that. If they don't, maybe that's someone you consider for a year or two, but you would have to try to – he's 33, so you might be able to get him on a short-term deal. But you could also lose out on a potential deal with Suarez, too, if he gets a really good contract in free agency. So I don't know. The options are definitely slim. There's not a ton of trade candidates either. So we'll see how they approach that. I'm sure they are going to explore what possibilities are out there, obviously, and they will see what's best. But if you get rid of Bohm, I'm not trying to campaign that Bohm should stay here, but if you get rid of him, you do have to have a plan in place for what's going to happen beyond that. So I'm curious what they decide that plan will be. I'm very excited for the Eagles fans to suggest that Nick Castellanos should go back to third base. That'll be a fun conversation this offseason. But but anyway, I had to sneak that one in there. Anyway,
the Eagles Phillies fans.
Yeah, the Eagles.
I can't even. I can't even think about them right now. I can't even think about them. They make me sick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think to Jeremy's point, I do think they would get value for Bohm too.
Absolutely. He's a young guy. He's got some control, and maybe you can develop him. And he's shown flashes too, like he has.
Yep.
Maybe a team's like, you know what? We'll make a play for him. We'll see. We'll kick the tires. Like, you could probably get good value out of him. But you, like Hunter was saying, you need a backup plan.
Yeah.
You do. Like, you need something already in place. Now, I'm not saying you like sign a guy and then flip him, but you have to have a solid plan before you do that rashly.
Yeah, or at least an idea of how you're going to address that position. Like you have to, then
Yeah.
they'll have a bunch of scenarios planned out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, watch, he'll end up with some team with a good hitting coach and he'll figure it out. But it's not going to be here, I don't think. So we talked about Trey already too. Very disappointing.
Yeah.
So we won't harp on that anymore. But yeah, AJ Brown
AJ
did
Brown.
play baseball. So anyway, I don't have too much to say on Harper. I mean, I think he had a fine series.
Yeah.
He got pitched around a lot. Like, I mean, Bryce is Bryce.
Yeah.
Probably some at bats. There's a couple at bats I'm sure he'd love to have back, and I don't think he's
Some
completely
tonight were not great, but like,
for sure.
I mean, if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have won game 2. So
we're not.
I'm not. Yeah. And again, they weren't pitching to him, and he was forcing some things which he felt like he had to do. Which I can't say I blame him, but like he had a fine series. He did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I think Aiden could play short or third. Like I think he could play either spot. I don't know. I haven't watched him enough to know which one he is better at. But I don't know if I love Trey at third, but there are other spots you can move Trey to. Stott is not a guarantee to stay here, which we'll talk about. Like he's coming up on same as Bohm. Like in a couple of years, he's going to be up for an extension. I don't know if he gets extended at this point. I think Stott is here next year, but next year is a big year for him. But yeah, they will figure it. If Aiden is that good, like as good as he's supposed to be, they'll shuffle pieces around. They'll figure it out. And if he's better than Trey at shortstop, they will figure that out too. So that being said, I did want to talk about Schwarber real quick. Did not have a good night tonight. Obviously, 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I thought he was fine. He had a couple walks. It certainly wasn't the best in the series, but he was also their only source of offense in Game 1. And someone said it earlier. I don't think I can find the comment, but they said someone was saying like, how about the year Schwarber had? And I honestly, this was his best year as a Philly. He didn't have as many bombs, but yeah, it was Dylan. Dylan said, let's talk about positives. Schwarber's had a hell of a year compared to last season. Completely agree. Like me and Ian both thought the last couple of years he was very good. And yeah, I mean, I thought Schwarber had a really awesome season, and I thought his approach was even a little bit better to where even more so I'm confident now that his approach will serve him well going into the back half of his career.
Yeah. I mean, granted, you also know diehard Schwarber fan, but like, I think he has shown you enough. You've got to extend him. Like you
clubhouse guy.
He's earned his. He is one. He's the only one, in my opinion, outside of maybe Bryce and Wheeler, who has some balls in that locker room and has that dog in him. Like is a leader. Is like they look up to him, and he knows the postseason. He knows it well. He's worth if he does this approach again, worth it in spades. Absolutely. Like Schwarber, I thought was so good this year. You have to extend him. You have to. He I thought he was okay this series. Like he was definitely not a guy you would point to and be like, that's the problem. Like he wasn't. Granted, he did strike out a lot, and tonight, obviously, a big stain because he didn't come up in the big moment. But again, you look at what he's done in the past, and how can you not say that he's been great? Like he is an integral piece to the clubhouse, to the team as a bat. Like he's got to stay. He just has to.
And again, the whole team didn't step up tonight. I mean, they're 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. The Mets had 15 opportunities with runners in scoring position through the first 3 or 4 innings of the game. The Mets had seen 11 guys come up with a runner on base. The Phillies had 10 total plate appearances, and I don't think they had a single runner on for any of those. So there was such a there's such a contrast. It was complete opposites of the offenses early on in that game. So certainly not all on Schwarber tonight. He didn't have a great night, but no, I mean, again, they had 4 hits tonight. They struck out 11 times. They got a couple. I mean, there worked some walks, but we talked about JT. The only guys we haven't talked about are Cassiano, Stott, and Marsh. Which the bench guys, I don't really have too much to say on them, to be honest. Quick piece on Sosa. Sosa's fine. Like he's a decent utility player, but he really can only play shortstop. He can't play third or second. We saw him make errors at both. I mean, he got the out at home on the second base play, but that could have been a double play on Tuesday night, and that really was a big momentum killer for us. So, or big momentum booster for them. Sosa's fine, but again, like I'm not going to say very replaceable because it's tough to find good utility players, but they could replace him. Stubbs, we talked about him. Marchand's got to be the backup catcher next year. Cody Clemens, I mean, look, he's proven he's a good 40-man roster player. Like he's at least AAA depth. I think he's at least a good regular season guy who can help you if you have injuries. He can help you get through regular season. And Weston Wilson, we talked about him. Think he's a good player for sure. Think he's a guy who needs a look in spring next year. Austin Hayes was really rough in his tenure here. I don't really think he needs to be on the roster next season. So that's really my summary on the bench. I mean, we'll talk about Rojas too, but Casti, look, I don't have too much to say about him this series because he was pretty good. I do think he had some crucial swings and misses and strikeouts in some spots where we really needed him. And I didn't feel like, even when he was going well, I just didn't feel like he was true protection behind Bryce Harper. I think he is back next year. I don't think they try to dump his contract. They have 2 years left of it. And I think he can be fine as a 7-hitter if they get a guy who can be behind Bryce. So I think Casti can still coexist with the rest of this group. But part of me just does want him out because he has been a part of this core. And there's a lot of things with him where it's like, I think this was probably the better, like one of his better postseason series for sure. I think the NLDS last year was awesome for him too. But like the previous 2 years, he was a big reason why we were not advancing. So, I have concerns with him, but I really do want to like tear him apart because I wasn't super impressed with this series, but I know that I can't really do that because of what he did, and we would have been swept without him. So I'm not a big fan of. I don't think he is a guy who's going to get us over the hump, but I also think he's the reason we were here too, and he was a big part of the regular season. I don't know if we go 500 down the stretch without him in the second half. We might completely collapse without him.
Yeah,
I'll give him his credit this year. I'm not going to jump on him too much.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to keep it really short because, again, I agree with everything. The one thing I did just want to hammer down was I'm with you on he didn't really feel like true protection. He was still chasing, and listen, he got the hits, and I'm not going to cheapen his hits. So please don't view me as cheapening what he did. But it did feel like he got kind of lucky on some of them. It did. Especially the one single that he had. I don't know if you saw, he was reaching for that ball. That's really all I have. Again, I'm kind of with you. I want to tear him apart, but I really can't. He's probably going to be on the team next year. They're not going to dump the contract. Yeah, he's great. I think he'd be elite bottom of lineup, but you've got to get guys in front of him. You just have to.
For sure. Yeah, and Stott and Marsh. I mean, look, Stott had definitely had a down year, and I'm a little concerned about him now. I think his defense is really good. He got on base at around the same clip, but definitely did not. I mean, I just did not love the year he had. I think his approach was a little bit different. I mean, I think he's playing for a lot next year. That's what I'll leave it at with him and Marsh. I'll just keep it short on him too. Hard to keep a guy around if you can't start him versus lefties and can't play him every day. And I love Marsh. I think he's a fun player. I think he's been really good in his role for the most part, but I don't think he's been good enough to where he's not been so elite versus righties to where you're just willing to get a platoon every year. At some point, you need a guy who can play every day out there. And he's also a very good center fielder, but he's not elite out there. So it's just tough going from Rojas to seeing him make a couple mistakes out there. It's kind of tough. And again, depending, that's the thing is you need another bat out there right now. The outfield's offensively, the outfield is really rough. So, you might get a guy in left field who's not the best defender, and Marsh is going to have to be the center fielder who covers some of that up too, which we did see him do that. Schwarber was in left field and Castillo was in right field the year we went to the World Series. So it's possible. But it's not the same as Rojas. And then, we'll talk about Rojas. There's obviously some things to talk about with him, but that's my quick thoughts on Stott Marsh right now.
Yeah. I'm going to keep it really short and simple because I think you hit everything. Stott's concerning. He's going to next year is going to be a big year for him. Again, the best way to describe it is you're eyeing up the panic button for Stott. You're not, your hand's not over it, but you're starting to look at it and go, well, he needs to have another good year and prove that he can be good offensively to earn his keep. There's not much to say there. I think he has it in him. I do. But next year will show a lot. Marsh, same thing. I'm with you. you just can't hang on to a guy forever that is a platoon, because right now that's all he's shown himself to be, is just a guy who hits off of righties and he can't hit lefties. Um, and again, you look at the way he tracks the ball in center field, it's not good. He clearly doesn't see it till it's a little too late. And again, Rojas will get to, but he's just so elite in center field. Like you go from Rojas to Marsh, which again, Marsh above average center fielder, but like compared to Rojas, you're like, this is a major downgrade. So,
Mhm.
um, that's all I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rojas, I mean, he's a great defender. I think he got a little better at the plate this year, but he's still pretty much an auto out in the playoffs. I thought he was fine in the series, honestly, when he played. It's never on him if the team doesn't perform. I mean,
Yeah,
again, if the guys in front of him do what they're supposed to do, he's not a problem, and it should never
yeah,
be a problem. Like he should never be someone who's going to be blamed offensively because again, he's the nine hitter, and it can get frustrating sometimes because you'd like to have better depth down there, but it's tough. And he's definitely still like a elite center fielder. I think the first half of his year was kind of disappointing from all fronts. I don't think he was as good defensively as he was supposed to be. Then when injuries happened, he got sent down and called back up. I think he was better for sure, but
yeah.
I think we're at a point like you need another bat out there right now, and
You do.
you're just gonna have to make room in left field for another bat. Like I don't think they can deny it anymore. You need a guy out there. You need a legit bat who's played in the big leagues, who's proven themselves, and there's options too this all season. Like you need to go get one of those guys right now. So
Yeah.
it's really all I have on the lineup, man. I mean, yeah, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the lineup before we kind of wrap up here, but
I really don't have anything else. I think especially Bohm was obviously the main bone to pick. Uh, and I think we hammered that home pretty hard.
yeah. Well, I mean that yeah, that's the season, man. Phillies lose the series 3-1 to the Mets in just horrific fashion. I mean, probably about the most nightmarish fashion you could imagine with that home run. I'm not even going to name names of who hit it, but
Yeah.
probably, I mean, like this was literally like the most nightmare scenario you could have had to end your season. Me and Ian were rooting against this coming to fruition for
Yeah.
weeks. We did not want to play the Mets, and this was what we feared would happen.
Not at all.
And here we are. Now we're talking about it actually having happened. So I don't know. Any closing thoughts on just this season, Ian? Your view on the 2024 Phillies? And I'm not gonna lie, I don't like really
Yeah.
want to watch. Usually, I'm excited to watch the video yearbook. I know Jack Fritz talks about that a
Yeah.
lot. I'm not. I don't. I'm not gonna watch this year. I'm that
uh,
serious. Like, I
yeah.
think I might watch up until the playoffs, and like then I'll stop watching. But just
Yeah. No.
go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. This year was a disappointment. There was a lot of talk that wasn't backed up. And
Yeah.
listen, I'll say this: I'm gonna watch the Phillies no matter what. They are my favorite team in Philadelphia still. Like that did not change. The series did not change that. But this offseason's gonna tell a lot of how bought in I'm gonna be on this team and on this team's success. Um, we need to make serious moves. And if we have another fringe move off season where it's let's sign Whit Merrifield equivalent, Whit Merrifield 2.0 as a bench bat, and we get a kind of a mid bullpen arm where you're like, okay, great. Like, it's going to be really hard to be bought in on the success of this team next year. And I'm not saying you have to go out and granted, I want to go out and get Soto. It would be a miracle if we got Soto. But I'm also not going to sit here. Like again, I think if you get, and I know you've been pounding the table for him forever, but you get a Tyler O'Neill, you get a Tommy Pham, like, yeah, I'm probably going to be more bought in. And I'm not going to lie, this sounds terrible. I know it's an addition by subtraction thing. I will probably be more bought in if Alec Bohm is not our third baseman next year. So that's where I'm at. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt, but yeah, on to the next.
Yep. Yeah, I don't really have like anything profound or like a big speech to give on like how much of a disappointment this is. Like we all know what happened tonight, and we all know what happened this series, and we all know what happened in the back half of the season. So like I'm not gonna really do the whole like um man, like this is such a disappointing legacy thing. Like everyone know like there's nothing I'm gonna say that we don't know at this point. But again, disappointment. I mean, that's the only word you can use to describe what happened this season. It was just went from great to concerning to then complete disappointment. And
Yeah.
the way it ended is just makes the whole regular season this year feel like a waste. And it's really tough to then go back next year and get sold on this team for another 162 when this could be very well be the result again next year. That's not out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, Braves fans, I don't like them at all, but we just went through what they went through versus us. And I can't imagine they had to go through that twice. If we lost to the
Oh,
Mets again next year,
suck.
I would have a really tough time coming back. Like I'm gonna be a Phillies fan no matter what. But like my emotional investment, which already like I've tried to keep it lower because I'm I don't I can't let it like there's something in me where it's like I can't not be invested. Like I went into today like I was the first 3 innings of the game I'm fully like funeral mode, and then they score the run. I'm like, oh, we're back. Like this is like
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm a Phillies fan at the end of the day. That's all of us, right? And all of us are different fans too. But that being said, like obviously relative to what it usually is, like something like this happens again next year, it's going to be really tough to come back the year after and be like, oh man, can't wait for the Phillies season to start. And
Yeah.
it's concerning, man. And hopefully this is a wake up call to the front office and that you can't just sit on your hands and be like, nah, we got the squad. Like we're good. We
Yeah.
figured everything out. Like, no, that can't happen this offseason. I'm not saying you have to make like a bunch of significant changes. You have to at least make a few and add some serious pieces this offseason.
Agreed.
If it's not, I don't, obviously Soto would be the dream, but like if they don't get Soto, there's still plenty of solid free agents and role players you could get that would bolster this team. And this bench needs to be made better too, because there's always guys who could end up
Yeah.
being on your bench who could still be important players for you. So, yeah, that's really all I got, Ian. I mean, again, it's just a complete disappointment. I'm really, I can't believe this is a reality at this point, but it is. And the Phillies got to figure this out, and everyone's got to take a long look in the mirror and figure out how they want to go fix this next year. So, I'm excited for certain guys. I'm not really excited for other guys, but there is some things to look forward to. I'm very excited for Andrew Painter next year, and we will see
Yeah.
what happens next season. But any other thoughts before we sign off here? Nope. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Appreciate y'all. This was a long stream, but there was a lot to talk about from this game and from this season. So we appreciate all you guys. God bless y'all,
Yeah.
and we'll talk to you this offseason. Peace.
Peace.